And we're going to review the agenda. Is there anything that anyone wants to add or subtract from the agenda? All right then, so we're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, just in time. I don't know if you want this back.
No, you can keep it. I printed a couple.
I'll take notes on that if you're not use that.
Sorry.
You can't control that accident.
Parking lot, 89.
And 89.
Where was it?
Tractor trailer.
But how far up?
Just north of the open exit.
So we were just getting to the visitor. There aren't any tweaks to the pledge as you saw when we're to the visitors.
Great.
We didn't change it at all. So, and as I told you, I put together some activities for the different pieces for the first two.
Yeah, let's just roll right into it, I guess. Last week, right, we talked about the questions.
We talked about questions last time, yeah.
Yep.
So what I thought I'd do is, and I was thinking James and Joanna, they're both online, so they could work together on there. And then I would have two groups of 3 board members, and Aaron, and I can join, but I put some chart paper, I've got some markers, and what I thought we could do for like 10 minutes is just in small groups brainstorm some questions.
Yeah.
And then say, okay, as we look at them as a group, if we had to put up two or 3 questions, I can say up to 3 that we think are the best we brainstorm, what are those?
Yep.
We do this activity a lot as a leadership team, it helps us refine. And then I have what everyone in the leadership team has got tired of me is I have these nice little dots. We'll look at what everyone did and we'll figure out a way to capture what James and Joanna do so then we can vote, so we can have like, what are our top, we'll get more than 4, but how do we prioritize the questions we see that we want to ask?
That sounds
So
good.
it's brainstorming questions we want to ask people to solicit feedback to know for input on what we want for goals.
Goals for the students or for the school board?
For the students, we're working on for the
Okay.
organization.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just like the exercise we did last time.
Right.
Those 3 questions that we had, that we did the one and then actually did a deep dive and then we noted there were a couple others.
Right.
Like we want to come up with, okay, so for anyone that wasn't here that doesn't recall, we did a exercise with the computer program.
We did thought exchange.
Thought exchange.
And we asked this, we only got to 1 question, but it really was around 3 questions.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed the feedback earlier. You were all very honest about, hey, Bill, you're a little too heavy with this, and the video is a little hard to digest, even though we may know the education world.
Right.
So the questions were, what are your community's hopes, dreams, and aspirations for every student? And you said these questions are a little tough too, so that was fine. What skills and mindsets do students need to thrive in our ever-changing world? And what are the implications for learning and equitable structures and practices in our school? I got a couple copies of it, so if you want it, I can make a couple more. Or each group could have it. These are just copies of the minutes.
Okay, it's also on the website.
It's on the website.
Yeah, I looked at it briefly, but
Yeah, that's
I
okay.
do better with the hard copy.
And so what I was thinking, just because of how we're arranged, if Nakuma, I hope, if I'm not pronouncing it, am I doing? Okay. Nakuma and Erica and Susan want to be a group, and Grant and Christy and Demetrius want to be a group. I've got some chart paper here. I got a bunch of different colored markers.
Yep.
And then I have Joanna and James and Aaron. How should we do them? Do you think we could just leave them up there talking, or should we put them in a breakout room?
I can just turn the volume down.
Just turn the volume down. And if one of you, maybe Joanna, you could record questions that you come up with and then refine it to 2 or 3.
Yep.
So I would say, my suggestion is there's a box of chart paper right behind Aaron. And this is like the sticky note chart paper, so it's got stick on it. Just brainstorm. Just brainstorm on one, and then on the second one, if you wanted to write what you think your top 3 questions are.
Yep.
And then we're gonna do some voting on it. And so I was gonna give you about, 15 minutes. I'll check in with each group. That might be a little much. We'll see how that goes.
Yes.
These are my favorite things in the world. I'm a big sticky note person.
This one?
That one's
Chrissy, I've got the
Oh,
second.
sorry.
So sorry.
We can, is that one?
Eric, you have one here.
Yeah, we can grab that one. Yeah, there's plenty of them around. Take a couple of colors, markers. There you go. Here's some for you.
Just over here?
Yeah, I think
Are we
you
doing
guys
all
can
three
decide if you want to do it right on the
questions?
table, or you can stick it up on the
I
wall,
don't know.
however you want to do it.
Are we doing all three questions?
No, it's what would you want, those three questions were ones that we did last week.
Okay.
I was told they were little concepts. It's what questions would you want to ask? It might be, like, here's one that I might think of, like, how would you describe success for students?
Okay, yes.
You know, it doesn't have to be profound. It's simpler, it's actually better.
Yes.
Okay? I don't know if you've heard all that, Joanna and James. I was just saying, it doesn't have to be profound, and simpler is usually a little better.
Yes.
Preschool kindergarten teacher, yeah.
So quite a while ago, we started talking about this before. Directing
All right, so,
goals, you know, and so students answer was, you know,
I'm gonna go to the cheat sheet
we want
first.
students success, the next step, whatever. So I guess I like those questions. How do we define success?
Yeah.
How do we define success? And what does that look like for
Okay.
our students as they might not graduate, but as they leave our education system?
What skills do you want them to have? Because even if they have early, you know, such as like GED or whatnot, what skills should they have? The ones they need.
Yeah, exactly, status quo good enough, right?
Yeah, but and they don't have to be correct.
What is success?
I was thinking like, how do you
I mean, I
define
think it's important.
success for your own child?
Oh, that's a good one.
Where do you think?
I teach pre-KK at SAS. What does success look like?
Skills to maintain. Because they're all, because our kids will need
Right.
physical education.
And then maybe the follow-on would be something about like, how do you define success for a grade or a class? You know what I mean? Like,
Do you think that's too narrow
doesn't,
or,
but I have a feeling that people would
Kind of borderline.
have maybe slightly different expectations of
or
their
education?
So,
Yeah,
That's a good
maybe we
one.
could even
Because
break it down into like
if you think about our community, we have different levels.
elementary and
Jobs that will perform functions and different skills.
Okay. At the individual level, at the
Yeah.
just like.
school level?
Do we consider that
Yeah.
our success, like education?
Yeah, because no matter what you are,
How would you define your elementary students, or what would you want elementary students to
Or
learn
do these,
before transitioning?
do these concerns change as the child progresses or grows? Or do they,
So maybe, how would you define success for your own child at the elementary level, at the junior high level? at the
Yeah.
high school level?
Yeah.
That's something I think about in terms of like a global citizen and what social skills do we need to have and other pieces that come together.
for this model, what, how do they choose they end up becoming this?
Manual, like Sharpie.
Yeah.
Start looking
Think
through.
about this, I always think about like family structures, so what sports
Okay.
should we build in?
They're writing the questions.
The chat, right?
They would offer
That's
like
what I was hoping.
family education classes, so parents could come and do these like inches of like language for free or how they should breakfast, courses on different skills from social work.
This is a how, yeah.
So I think we need to include a family.
So how does he just phrase that?
So, or maybe we can phrase it like, what is the school
You're
district?
trying to say this, you're trying to reach for.
What background services do we provide for family success?
That's great. One of my elementary school where I lived, I didn't go to that one. They actually had offered ESL and GED courses for teachers. And so like my four teachers, I don't know where the students.
What do we discover?
And so like
Yeah.
pre-K kids, just hearing would actually go with them to school and they would just go to different classes.
Yeah.
And do GED
Successful.
or ESL needed.
for.
Wraparound.
I like that second one, but with others, you were kind of going down this road, Randall, your own, or
Yeah.
all children.
Right.
So what would you say?
For families?
I think it's easier for me to connect.
What supports do we need?
Yeah.
It's easier for me to connect when I talk about myself.
Right.
But then, so what would you think about for all?
So,
So what would success criteria for all kids?
For all kids.
wraparound supports do we need for family success?
You might get the same, you might get different.
For families, what do we need?
Based off of the
What supports for families?
would you be asking the same exact questions?
Well, that's what we're gonna talk about a resource that we have later on, but I think right now, if we get this, that resource actually help with how we do the questions for different audiences.
Right, and I don't know, is that a question?
Because here's what I-
What's your role, or what is your perspective on this? Parent, business?
So we talked about that last week, right, or last time, was we could have different groups and we may have different questions for different groups.
Right, because sometimes you have to, it's okay,
Yeah.
you're just trying to get in.
Right, so this may be more appropriate for parents,
Right.
but it might not be a good one
So that, I don't know
for.
if this is part of this.
You might say-
Some of the business leaders that
See,
they.
this is already one for the business, right? So would you say for all kids?
Because it really needs to be everybody.
I like the second one, but I want that like, what do you see missing? Or, you know, like, what, it's kind of the negative there, but
It's kind of a spin on this one.
it's a spin on that one, but it's a different one of like, or what, you're saying what more can be done, or, you know,
Sure.
but it's like, sometimes people connect with
This
so.
is something that's in Western translation, that's not as
What do you see missing?
to the family.
Yeah.
Right.
I think for
Or what are
me,
the
that was
opportunities that are?
family education, right? So I do like.
I'm not trying to get into
Here's what
grammar
this
or
looks
the right
like for your
words, right?
child.
Yeah.
Is this? I sent all my little bags for parents to activities, but it's like math, and it's like, and I know what the one is like, just like 4 full-time
We were in, we did this.
education
So-
support programs and what's happening. Was it like?
I think this would make useful pre-COVID.
That they're equal part of
It wasn't- And Bill and I might be wrong, but you were here. My first time on the school board was.
Yeah, so why I said what
So, I don't have much experience with it.
Some of it came from me asking, is that, or not? That's kind of, I think that's how it's supposed to be said, right? Because I'm not saying it isn't,
Yeah.
but I want to know if it is.
Station family shelter.
Yeah.
I babysit my
We
kids.
had a lot of the equity
Family
discussions while Dr. Grove was superintendent.
Exactly.
It never got quite as deep as when Bill took over. And, you know, that, so we have like, equity, goals for the organization, goals for the board. So those are kind of 3 big broad topics that the board has occupied themselves with, like just in the background, just everything else we've been working on. And so this is like one part of that. And, you know, like I said, so after we did the superintendent and superintendent search, it became that much more relevant because we had to kind of redefine the organization. So, you know, aspect of it. We'll kind of refer to Dr. Grove. Did that. Without feedback.
Do you feel empowered or do you feel like you contribute to
Yes.
Are we translating it into different languages?
Like that time you contribute to the current. Like if you had a voice.
Yeah, so you have influence and contribute. Not obviously not taking it.
All right.
So we get, that is going to be different if you're an educator, a parent, or something.
And they've been like part of the jargon, like it makes them feel like, oh, they're doing something that they're good, and we bring it down to a really simplified level. Again, that a little bit of babysitting comment. But there's also, I think there's teaching.
I was working with someone yesterday who's an intelligent and he talked about that.
Gain their perspective.
He was commenting about how this whole stuff, I just didn't understand.
So what is missing?
do bring it down to my level. And it's
Is that
it's
mean-
totally different
what
field.
is it
If it was an educator, I mean, it's like me talking to you.
That's a difference. You don't understand
But
the
that,
background education.
but that medical literacy is a piece of
So also if you're, I don't know, a senior,
That's-
what are they thinking about getting, like,
And I was really just using that as an example of, when you speak at a
I work like a GE, that's how I can tell you, it's like, if you're speaking to a 5-year-old when you're treating a patient, which is very hard to do when you're thinking in a high level, it's just a weird thing in your brain. But I realize that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
But I think, especially in our current situation of the world, we need more.
Well, it gets
families.
it, personalized. So like, I was over there with them and I said, well, I know what's missing. Like, this is a positive way of saying it.
Yeah.
So like, what,
like we have,
We have-
something that needs like.
And without taking them to help me, because I didn't go to, well, I don't need your help, I can do it on my own.
Right.
How can you support you?
Each email is like, what is it does send home.
That wording comes right out of the book of the graduate, right? Because it's just aspirations.
Is station.
Seems a little cheesy.
It's not very tangible.
No, we're like, it's like good teachers. So it's like the best thing when I was teachers, I was like, great, I get to go home with my bag of burgers every day. But things like that, I think are really great programs that people need.
My mom did dinner, actually, last week, too much here, too.
What, how do you define success in your opinion? How do you define success for all kids? How about, how do you think, like, what would you say, how would you say the community defines success? Like, would be different?
So
Like,
maybe
what-
this also, what supports do we need for family
What
success?
does the community value?
What you were talking about really was,
From a-
yeah,
you know,
so
individual
to bring again, I like it, I like that. Yeah.
Same thing as like family success.
I like that, that's good, yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I'm trying to think of how to. I was like, I didn't do that. What are the
That was when
expectations?
you could work with therapy, but my teacher was really good in therapy.
Yeah, are we accessing the Howard Center, or should we more things, are we more just getting to do more evening appointments, like, how are we flexing our life?
So I'm trying to figure out my son's starting school, is there, is he just going to check a school, or is he going to figure it out?
And that's something that's like, the state will come in and I just need to wait to have those hours, how we. And so like, and so like, is that like before or after school here? Or like, what are we utilizing?
Joanna and James,
Actually, no, YMCA program.
how are you doing for time? Yeah, it's great. You're doing a great job on the chat. It's awesome.
Yeah, we could access that.
How are you guys doing?
We're at the
This
paper,
group
so
over
we're
here.
I'm doing well, we pulled the page.
Okay,
I don't think we have any clear limit.
okay. So, kind of looking at these, maybe it'd be great, and we can use the camera to zoom in, so James and Joanna can get an idea of what's on each one. And it looks almost like it's
I think it's mirrored.
mirrored, so it might be hard to read. It looks fine on there? Okay. All right. So this is what one group put together. James and Joanna kept all theirs up in the chat up there, so we'll be able to take a look at that. Erica, you want to just read those real quick in case you haven't had time seeing them?
We talked mostly about supports in the community and success. So we talked about what does success look like for every learner? What skills overall do we want our students to have upon their completion of education, whether that's high school or GED? What does it look what does it take to become a productive community member? So what does it look like for those students to take those skills and go into the community and be a positive community member? What family supports do we need for wraparound success? So what do we need to add in or partner with new or existing programs? And what supports do we need for family success? If we're talking about that after school hours of 3 to 6 where families are really struggling to provide care, we're talking about before school care, we're talking about food insecurity, more education. What is it that families need to feel successful?
Any questions for the group that produced that list? James, you good? You just give me a thumbs up. I see you. Or you just tell me you're good. Good, great. Okay, so I'm gonna go over to Grant, your group.
Sure, I'll go through them. You know, our kids are already prepared today, is first question we came up with. Second question was, how do you define success for your own child at the various levels, elementary, junior high, high school? I'm going to go out of order a little bit because some of these are sort of connected. Another question would be, what are the success criteria for all kids? Okay, it's a little different than success criteria for your own kid. And then another one sort of related would be, what are the community expectations of students and graduates, right? Kind of getting people to think about it from the various perspectives and from, you know, various groups that they, you know, whether it's their own individual family or if it's a bigger organization. Some of the other questions we came up with were, you know, how can the district help your child be successful? Also kind of related to that is, you know, what is missing in terms of right now, with what's missing in terms of curriculum or like the supports, like the social, emotional supports and skills, which is, I think kind of goes along with what skills you want to have on your list. And then, you know, the participation of, you know, the various groups that we're going to be talking to, you know, to speak to that, you'd ask, have you had an influence on your child's education? Have you had an influence on the educational system? So maybe two separate questions there. And I think that is all.
So again, questions, comments, understanding from what that group put together? Joanna, we have yours, and James, we have yours up in the chat. And if you want to explain this a little bit.
Sure. So one of the first things that we came up with, James was really interested in kind of surveying how important is digital literacy for students. Another one that I came up with was, what are the most important skills for career and personal development? What does MRUSD staff do that makes you feel like a partner in educating your child? And I kind of took a little stab at that as well. How can families and MRUSD communicate and partner to optimize student success, which sent us down the rabbit hole of, you know, where you all, I think the first group really talked about what is success, what does student success mean, so on and so forth. So what does it mean for a student to be successful at and after graduating school, academically, socially, emotionally, physically healthy? And then I just thought of listening to what Grant was saying, it made me think of like, what are the barriers to student success? So that's pretty much where we're at right now.
That's pretty good. So I had a plan for prioritizing and doing dots, but I see a lot of commonality. So I'm kind of looking at you, Grant, as the chair. I'm wondering if I take what's in the chat, what's on each of the papers, and put those together and try to combine them, because there's a lot of similar questions.
There's similar questions, and I think that there's probably also questions, like we may wind up using all of these.
Right. Now, I wasn't going to lose any of them. I want them all in the document.
Well, in one form or another, right? Depending on the group you're talking to, you may select a different set of questions.
Yeah, but I saw a lot of similar themes, and so I could take what's in the chat, put those together, and we could kind of group them for everybody. And
the only thing I might put out there, and more of a decision for you, Bill, would be consider how much feedback you want on how to do things. Right, and whether or not you're comfortable asking those questions and getting that feedback on sort of how the administration does things.
I think that kind of goes to a discussion we're going to talk about in a minute. Yeah. And we're going to get some of that. Okay. And we just have to live with that. Sure. Okay. We have to live with that. People are going to say, wow, you don't do this and that. Yeah. Okay, I understand.
If you ask questions that solicit that, then you'll definitely get it.
You're going to get it. Yeah. So we'll get kernels of pieces in there to help us inform what we're doing.
If you're comfortable sifting through that, then I think all these are great. Yeah.
So if people are good with that, I think we're not going to do that prioritization piece. And then we're going to switch into the people we want, the groups of folks we want to talk to. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do is just kind of whole group instead of in small groups. I'm just trying to think of the best place to post this, so it might be right behind you, Grant, so I don't want to tear that.
Good.
Post these two first, and then I'll talk. What?
You've already got this.
Yeah, I've got two lists. We asked you to think about different groups of people to talk to. And before the community members joined the subcommittee, the board members, because we were trying to decide like what type of representatives we want. And so the list I'm posting right now is kind of a list of folks that we want input. Hopefully Susan and Joanna and Grant remember us doing this. It was on a Google Doc.
Yep.
So I combined it a little bit because we had some things were redundant. So we had, and hopefully Joanna and James, you can see this and hear me. Yeah, okay, I got a reaction on Joanna.
I can hear you.
You can't hear
Just a
me?
little blurry.
Okay.
No, I can hear you. It's just a little blurry.
Just a little blurry, so I'll read this. From that initial brainstorm back in, I think it was April, when we first formed, these are the groups we had. We had board, taxpayer, residents, students, parents, faculty, staff, local government leaders, business leaders, higher education, local trade representatives, and then social services. We said NCSS, but then we started saying, well, all the social services like Spectrum, Voices Against Violence,
CVOEO.
CVOEO, you know, just take over Tim's house, so things like that. And then one of the things, and there's a third piece about a partnership opportunity here. I told all of you about we're working with Creative Discourse Group to help us with our equity work and help us lead conversations around equity. We're doing the same thing. So you can see in their list that we had a conversation this week about was having affinity groups for BIPOC residents, for LGBTQ plus population residents, students, staff, board members, Neighbors for a Safer St. Albans City's BEI committee. And I talked to Ryer a little bit about this, and he said this might be like one, not two. Social services organizations, legacy families, so folks that have lived here generations. So, indigenous and Abenaki population. So you can see there's some groups that are the same here, or a little twist from the groups that are over here. But what I want to do is bring up, because I've run out of paper on here, but I wanted to have from all of you, after you see this list, what's missing? What other groups do we need? And we can put that up here. So let me get a piece of paper and then, and you get to all deal with my writing and spelling.
Do
So
you want me to write?
that would be great. Yours is, I was a high school teacher, a physics teacher, not a.
Kindergarten, I got it.
Kindergarten, you got it. You go for it, Eric's got it.
We know we don't want you to write.
Yeah, we don't want me to write. We know that.
You don't have childcare on there,
That would be great. So thank you.
so like, yeah.
Yeah, just write it right up there.
And also include like after school.
Yeah.
What about like pediatricians or medical facilities, things
Okay.
that?
So our medical health / health partners. Yep.
Karen, can you go back to the other list?
To the other list?
Can you
Perfect.
show
Thank
another
you.
2 months?
Yeah.
What
Oh,
about
you're good.
extracurricular people like coaches or instructors or
Yeah.
be up there in different programs? Yeah, they're
Yeah,
they're
how would you
behavioral
like me to phrase it?
at different ages.
Like rec, labs,
Recreational?
rec, yeah.
Yeah.
Coaches, instructors, yeah, I like the
Recreationals.
Right there, actually.
How about the faith?
Oh, there we go. I'm holding that for you, Joanne. I'll just put recreation
Instructor.
coaches after
So
school.
what's it, do you call it dance teacher?
Yeah, co-curricular instructor, yeah. Yeah. And then the faith community, faith leaders, faith.
I don't know if we would want to tap into like the homeschooling groups and see what they have, because why did they choose?
This is a
homeschool?
brainstorm right now, is
Yeah.
that homeschool groups?
About police and military.
Okay.
Those are one or two.
Wouldn't that fall underneath,
It could be under
Could be under government, but.
social service or government.
are we including, is the social service including like food shelf and other?
Yeah, I would think food shelf. I was just at one yesterday with the health department. They had a whole bunch of services.
Okay.
We had health, we had CVOE. CVOE, we had the hospital, we had NCSS, we had representative from, I think it was Martha's Kitchen, but it was one of the, have an active representation on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
My kids get a whole different education on the bus.
Actually, the
If
bus company should
if
be.
the bus driver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a bonus.
And they're on the bus for a while, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was, bus company, I get what you're saying, just in terms of school, but I mean, how about just transportation, public transportation as well?
Bus company / public transportation, yeah.
Is there a large population, I know in Burlington where I live, there's a large refugee population, and so we utilize the services of the Vermont Refugee Resettlement Program, is that something that's on the list?
Not yet.
That would
Not
be.
yet. I would think that would be coming, but.
But there is a large group of migrant workers.
So if we should.
So that's a
be
good,
looking at
that migrant.
Yeah.
Migrant justice is a good group for that.
Yeah.
Migrant justice.
But also, the migrant population that is in our schools, yeah.
Yeah, we should, that's a good,
It's a good group to tap into.
absolutely. There might be some conflicting.
There may be what?
Some conflicting groups up there. You know, like migrant justice and can go with like border patrol or military people.
Yeah.
But we don't have to be with them at the same time.
No, we're just trying to brainstorm the group.
Yeah.
So I think I'm gonna stop it here. And James and Joy, I'm not quite sure how to get you in on this from remotely, so I'll take any thoughts. But what I wanted to do was I was gonna give you all 7 dots. And have you, what are your 7 priority, but take the groups that you see up here. If we can only do 7, I'm not saying that is the number, but it's the number of dots I'm gonna give you, and I'll explain that in a minute. And then we could help us prioritize these groups. So for Joanna and James, if you wanted to, we leave the camera up a little bit, and then if you wanted to put in the chat the groups that you thought were your highest priority, 7, and then we could transfer that over. I think that's probably the best way. I'm kind of looking at Aaron to think, I think that might work the best.
The only question I have is,
Yeah.
is like, all the affinity groups will fit into the initial groups. So would we separate those 2, or would we keep them all as one?
So I think that's what we can talk, we're going to talk about our work with Creative Discourse
Okay.
Group in a minute.
Okay.
But I want to know your overall priorities, and then we'll go with how, we have a really good chance of, I think, really deepening our work and getting it better.
Because all those people.
And
fit into-
combining our work, and they're up there, they wanted to be here tonight, but they couldn't. So that's our next meeting, is to talk with them about how we can combine our efforts. So, I'm gonna give each, Erica and Demetrius here.
You can take it in.
And you can't auction these off.
Do I get the half dot too, or?
You get the half, you gotta walk these ones and go with it. Okay. So you also get another one, so there's only 6 in a strip.
Oh, figure that out eventually.
Yeah.
We're putting them on all 3 sheets?
You can put wherever you're on all 3 sheets, yeah. And if there's the same group on 2 sheets and they're separate, we've totaled those before when I do the process. I say there's parents on 2 different sheets, I'm gonna total them.
Yeah, because it's 5 o'clock, my groceries can go down.
Yeah, you want to just put it
These 2 can be combined.
For Joanne and James, it may be hard for you to see, look everyone in front of me, sorry.
I'm a admin for the university,
I can email them a picture.
Yeah, that might be easiest, yeah.
Go for it.
do which one's on.
They do
Bringing in the additions.
Oh, I could do
I
several
don't stickers.
actually.
Yeah.
We only have 7.
Shorter one.
We may have, I guess.
I'm out of stickers. I'm not out of.
You're not out of groups. Doesn't mean you don't want more, it just means you have to prioritize.
Yeah. And I didn't double vote. This one's really important.
I thought about double voting, and I was like,
I've done that before, like,
Pass
this one's
the
really
stats.
important to me, I
Yeah.
put 2 or 3 on it, yeah.
It's like when you're going down the raffles and you see the basket,
Yeah.
with, like everything you want.
Right.
You're like, oh, my ticket's going there.
Oh, my ticket's going, yeah.
Yeah.
But our local volunteer fire department does that every fall.
Yeah.
When they have a dinner, they have the raffle too. You can put one in all, or you can
It's just one.
I use full and all.
all one.
you're clean.
No.
You don't have a little cleanup? I like a
I think
little.
my son will have anything every time.
Really?
At some point, the raffle just becomes more expensive than the actual items.
Let's go back.
I just hope I didn't vote for the same one.
And it should be different colors. Like more double. That's true.
And I know James and Joanna are taking a few minutes because Aaron sent them pictures of that chart, so let's go ahead. So,
In case anyone is not familiar, CCD is currently doing free coursework for a family who makes under $75,000, which many of our families fall into that bracket, so just something to
Correct.
spread.
What are they doing?
It's free, like they're doing free classes and degrees, associates for under 75,000. So if you have anyone that you know of that age or who's looking to pursue more, now is the time to do that.
Eric, I should have you send me some information on it. That's something we should put out in the paper run.
Yeah.
On our news.
Yeah,
That'd be really
I saw it in an article in a newspaper, and I was like, oh, this is great.
Well, they were supposed to have an open house a couple weeks ago, and I was going to go over,
Oh, really?
but then something changed.
Is there a branch up here for your
Oh, yeah,
CCD?
right.
Oh, yeah, that'd be perfect. But, oh, yeah, but in terms of like, if some of our high school students aren't
Our high school,
sure,
yeah, we have high school students.
it would be a great way for them to
Yeah.
start, because they could get an associate's for free before if they wanted to transfer somewhere else.
Actually,
Yeah.
and quite a few students
do that.
I did that. It was, yeah, I saved
Yeah.
so much money.
Susan, did your girls?
My kids didn't, well, actually, they did a couple of dual enrollments.
Right.
Yeah, so they did a couple of dual enrollments, so that they were ahead when they, didn't
Yeah.
help them because.
Yeah, I did my associates with CCB and then TVM for my undergrad, and I saved $40,000.
Yeah, so a lot of kids, I think, coming out of BFA.
But that would be a
Credits.
great resource,
Yeah.
especially for families who are unsure of the next step for their child. Maybe a good open house flyer. Yeah, and for families themselves to be able to access, like parents and other caregivers might really want to be doing that. I know that there's a,
So Joanne and Jane, oh, we got James, so I can, it is.
I can read them if you want to put them
You
on.
want to read them?
Sure, the first one is BIPOC,
Yeah,
and then Indigenous Abenaki
yeah.
residents.
Well, I have a question. So the I in BIPOC is indigenous, so I'm wondering why we're presented in those two groups when Abenaki would be under the indigenous
I
I.
would be.
I agree, James.
Okay. We can put those together.
And then it's LGBTQIA population.
Yeah.
Students,
Yeah.
staff,
Hold on.
parents,
Yep.
St. Albans BEI committee,
Yep.
and social services organizations.
Okay. Joanne, if you want to read to me, if that's easier than typing it in, that's fine too.
Oh, she did
Oh,
students,
students, okay, hold on. Students,
parents,
yeah. Hold on, I'm just gonna get Mr. Bruce on here. Yeah.
vocational rehabilitation,
It's not on here. Were you thinking that was trade representatives?
I guess they're social service slash trade slash higher ed. I mean,
Okay.
they're all of the above.
okay.
We were trying to get 2 votes.
Local government leaders,
Local government, yeah,
BEI,
yeah,
and then BIPOC
I kind of
and
put those
LGBTQ
together.
yeah.
population.
Okay, well, this isn't the final list. It's a way for us to get something, kind of rank it, look at it before we come back to the next meeting and get it from there. So Grant, I was thinking we should move on to the chance of working with, opportunity we have to work with the Creative Discourse Group.
Absolutely. So, I mean, other than just noting that we have that opportunity to work with Creative Discourse Group, could you maybe reintroduce, I think we talked about this a little bit last time, but
Yeah.
could you just reintroduce them?
Yeah, so
What
what
they
I
are,
did is
who they are, what they do.
I brought more of the timeline for folks.
But maybe also a little bit about the organization.
That's what I was going to do that
Okay,
first.
perfect.
Yeah, but I just thought I'd hand that around.
Yeah.
And this timeline has been adjusted already because of the kickoff is starting a little later than we wanted. The Creative Discourse Group is a group that works with communities and organizations, either municipal, education, on helping really looking at equity issues within your organization or within your community. And they really customize that to where the organization or community is at. So we looked for, to give a little history, I won't go too long into this, but last December, we were going to have a community forum to talk about racial issues in Maple Run. And that had to be put on hold. And at the same time, the folks that were helping us with that, which was the Partners in Restorative Change, said, we actually think there's someone better than us to do this. And this is the group, Creative Discourse Group. And they do, they have over 20 associates. They've worked across New England and doing this. They're a Burlington-based organization. And they're Nadia DeBose, I want to make sure I get her last name right, and Sue McCormick are the 2 principal leads. And we've been working with them, and this summer we had a meeting, and I told them of the work of the goals committee. And they said, oh boy, not in a bad way, but they were like, hey, we might be tapping the same people to do the work. And we might be able to work together to deepen the conversations and help move the work forward. But they also looked at our timeline and said, and I've known Sue for over 10 years, and before she did this work, she worked with communities and school districts to do strategic planning and goals, the work we're doing right now. And she said, I think you're just a little too aggressive to really get this done completely. So fast forward, I invited Nadia and Sue to meet with Grant and I this past Monday to talk about the work. And they would have liked to be here tonight, to be with us, to say, how do we partner? But they're willing to come to a next meeting and have a time to discuss their work more in depth and what their proposal is. But what they looked at from what we had in St. Albans and how the leadership team had kind of prescribed what we had got through with that history was really doing a listening session first before we got to a big community meeting, and meeting with historically marginalized groups to find out what are their hopes and aspirations. Sounds similar to what we're talking about for goals, right? So how do we combine the efforts so we're not tapping the two and then design something to come together? So I propose that the four of us meet, we did on Monday, and Grant, stop me or add in when I miss something, and that we have a chance for them to come in and work with us and we co-construct this together. The other part that Sue said to me, which I've always known, we're in a public meeting right now. So this is a public meeting accessible to anyone. We haven't had many visitors. We're deliberately recording so people can see what we're doing. That's not necessarily the safest way, especially for folks that have been historically marginalized, to respond to questions. So they have some ideas, and I don't want to speak too much for them, but having a way of having some of this gathering not be a public meeting, but still gather the information and bring it back to this group. So I thought it was really wise, and what would you add, Brand, from what I said?
I guess what I would add would be that, this group is a group that was approached by the administration, right? And has been working closely with administration. The board, I guess for as long as I've been on it, and longer I'm sure, has very clearly provided direction to the administration that equity is an important part of what we do. And so my understanding is that they use this group and groups like it to ensure that our policies and procedures are aligned with equity objectives. Right? So that's happening kind of in the background. Now, it's not a group that informs the board directly, typically, right? And so this committee will inform the board directly. And so this is a place where we're basically have an opportunity to take advantage of some consultants that have already sort of been pre-selected and determined to be a good fit with the district, and make sure in the same way that any policy or procedure that comes from the board or from the administration is aligned with equity goals, we can bake that in from the beginning. So I think it's a really good opportunity personally. I do think also that it protects us in a way from putting on a deliverable that's not aligned somehow, if we were to reach one of those conclusions, because I don't think that would be well accepted by the board.
Right, and Sue and Nadia said they were more than willing to be a resource for this, to give information to this group.
Yep.
So they're not, and just how do we do that?
So you're not proposing combining the two efforts, but just using a single event to inform both efforts? Or
No, it's more of a combination, Demetrius, is that we look at who are they going to speak with, and not double the effort and go after the same.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So, but the creative discourse group still has their objectives, and this goal setting group, we just would be using
information,
specific or targeted audience
So maybe
to inform both groups.
Yeah, maybe I can, so, once you've
Same
convened,
audience.
once you've convened that group, right, you want to get that information as efficiently as possible. We'll have information that we want to inform goals, they'll have information that they want.
Right.
Right, and, we can either have a part A to the meeting, or a part B to the meeting, or we can try to have that be a more integrated approach.
No, we're just saying, using a
Yeah.
single meeting to inform both efforts.
Right, and they may talk with a group that that this committee doesn't
Yes.
talk with. Especially if they're doing affinity groups, people that, if you're, and I am not the expert on this, so I want to say that right up front, this is not my expertise. But what I've learned from colleagues is that with an affinity group, the person that's leading it should be a member of that affinity group. So for me to go in and lead a group of BIPOC, it's just not a safe place for people to do that. And so I've had that told to me several times. And so how do we, and they have consultants that can do that with different affinity groups. And that's one of the reasons we approach them, because they have such a rich and diverse selection of associates to pull from.
Yeah, so at a very practical level, it gets us away from sort of the framing effects that you get when you ask a question. A lot of that the answer to that question can depend on who asked it, how they asked it, in all those different, considerations. And so here we have a group that is trained in how to ask hard questions, of people that have been marginalized in a safe way, and, we can take advantage of that.
So what I was thinking is that the next step was we would schedule the next meeting. I unfortunately didn't get a chance to talk to Sue or Nadia before today to get a list of dates that they had. So we can do that through email and say, when can we bring us all back together, have that conversation with them, have a little bit of design. Also use Sue and Nadia's experience of just doing this work of goals and gathering that information and what have they done, and really look at our timeline from there and kind of see how we can collaborate to make this a deeper project, a richer project. I see a lot of nodding, so I'm taking a lot of, so that's what I would propose, and then we'll do a quick doodle poll. I'll get a couple of dates from Nadia and Sue, and we'll do a doodle poll for the next meeting, but I'm not trying to put it out too far. They literally, until I think Monday, last week, they're like, well, we think we can make that, and then they couldn't, so.
And, I mean, the challenge that this creates then is that it is, in a way, some scope creep, right? We're doing more, we're incorporating more feedback than we had originally intended. And so it would not be unexpected for things to take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I talked to Bill, they have a plan for what to do.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's been a concern of mine that I've been asking the board is, I said, I need some goals.
Yeah.
Joanna's heard that from me, I need some goals. And the board's done a really good job of, the leadership team's done a really good job of redefining our theory of action for our work from our envisioning plan, which I'd be glad to share with all of you. I'm sharing, that went out in the letter to staff last week, the refinement, and gives us some good, it could be the goals for this year. And I don't think they're far off.
And Joanna?
So basically, I think one way to kind of simplify, I think, what you're asking would be, and forgive me, Nadia and Susan, I don't remember the name of their organization, but basically just putting list, and they would be one of the resources. And so they would just be providing us a ginormous amount of information. But I mean, if you put them right up there on that list, then that, to me, answers a lot of the questions. So they're an expert that we will go to.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a great way to think about it, right? If we took certain groups from up here, that's what you're saying, and say, maybe we're not going to go out directly, we're going to get that information through the creative discourse group, right?
Yeah.
I think that's exactly right.
So what I would do is hopefully by Friday, get a doodle, or I should say Aaron, as you all know, everything when I already said it's Aaron, or Aaron, either one of them. But we'll put out a doodle poll, and we'll get some dates from Sue and Nadia. I'll email them tonight and see what they look like. I'll probably be targeting Mondays and Wednesdays, just to give them a little flexibility. And I'd like us, I'm thinking by I think it's the 7th of September is our first board meeting, so I'd like us to have another meeting before then if we can. And then we'll give you all, we'll get 2 or 3 dates from them, and we'll do a doodle poll and see how we get as many as possible. Does that work for everybody? Okay. James, Joanna, that work for you? Good, thumbs up, thumbs up. That's what I got for you.
All right, well, I think that's exactly what we did, so. I guess the only thing left on the agenda is to schedule our next meeting.
Well, that's why I said, good, how many?
And that's really the doodle poll, so,
Yeah.
yeah. Anything that anyone feels that we've missed, from what we set out to do tonight? No? Okay. Since we're all out of agenda items, at 6:03, we are adjourned.
Thank you all.